All right, if we look back through history, we can observe a series of shifts in economic thinking. What I want to speak with you today is about our current system of capitalism, the global economy and how it's functioning, and the most recent shift in economic thinking, which I have observed. Now, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. Almost 25 years ago, the Berlin Wall came down, and the world rejoiced because this signaled what had become an end to a century-long battle between capitalism and communism. I actually made this picture myself. That is Adam Smith, the father of capitalism, and Karl Marx, the father of communism. And clearly, capitalism was the winner. It was embraced throughout the world. There simply seemed to be no other way. The economist Hernando de Soto put it like this: the third world and former communist nations have balanced their budgets, cut subsidies, welcomed foreign investments, dropped their tariff barriers, but their efforts have been repaid with bitter disappointment. So what went wrong? Well, John Maynard Keynes, another very well-known economist who basically wrote the book on modern macro, he pointed out that the outstanding faults with the economic society in which we live are its failure to provide for full employment and its arbitrary and inequitable distribution of wealth and incomes. Now, he said that a great many years ago. He was right then, and I still believe he's right today. Now, his critic, a man named Murray Rothbard, who hated him so much, he once said the only thing he liked about Karl Marx was that he was not a Keynesian. And in his response to this theory, he says that it speaks only to the interests and concerns of the marginal classes who are self-employed. The great bulk of people are the full-time wage workers. They are the people with steady jobs. Now, this is what piqued my interest in this topic, because something down deep inside of me knew that he was wrong, and in fact he was, but we'll get back to that. So let's build some awareness about, or let's work on our terminology, because I know some of you are not economists. So, capitalism. What is capitalism? Well, capitalism is definitely it can be defined in many, many different ways, and it works in different ways around the world. There's definitely no one set way of capitalism, but there are certain things that all systems hold in common, and our textbook definition is an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit. Now, the key to this definition is for profit. Now, let me be very clear. I don't have anything against profit. It's an incredibly powerful force, but I believe that it's a force that can be used for good. Now, the other piece to our capitalist puzzle is the free markets. Now, as much as I dislike Rothbard, he did give us a good definition of free markets. He said that the free markets are a network of free and voluntary exchanges in which producers work, produce, and exchange their products for the products of others through prices voluntarily arrived at. This is all based on the idea made popular by Adam Smith, who we met earlier, that individuals acting on their own self-interests will create prosperity. It's what most people know as the invisible hand of the free market. And this should work. It's a good theory, but all of these economists were writing from a first world perspective. And in fact, these principles do work very well in our developed world. They've given us all the prosperity that we know today and that we see all around us. But sadly, they've created a situation in our world where the poor and the disenfranchised are being left behind. There's a very significant difference between economic demand and economic need. And today in our world, they're much out of balance. So, let's, the theme of today is Revelations to Revolutions, which I kind of interpret as awareness to action. So, building upon this awareness, we need to learn about how our economy is functioning. Now, there are two functioning economies in the world today. There's the formal sector, the formal economy, which is pretty much capitalist. Our formal sector operates under systems of capitalism. But there's also the informal economy, which has been excluded from capitalism. Today, there are 1.8 billion people working and living in the informal economy. And by the year 2020, that number will reach 2/3 of the world's workers. The majority of the world's population will be informal. So a distinction should be made between this informal economy and the black market. The informal economy is anything that would otherwise be legal, but is untaxed and unregulated, so basically off the books. The black market is everything else: your guns, drugs, organ trafficking, sex trafficking, and the like. Now, we're not very used to this idea of the informal economy here because in the United States, we have the smallest one at around 10% of our economy. But it's still there. This is a site that's becoming more and more popular as years go by. Developing nations such as China, where my heart lies, their informal economy hovers around 13%, low teens to the high kind of 20%. But in underdeveloped nations such as sub-Saharan Africa, their economies can be between 50 and 90% of the entire economy is informal. If we could round up all of this informal work and give them their own country, the gross domestic product of that country would be $10 trillion. To put that in perspective, China today has the world's second largest formal economy with a GDP of $6 trillion. And we're still number one, of course, at $14 trillion, just 4 ahead of the informal economy. So, why is this happening? Or as this cute Chinese book asks, why does poor people be poor? Well, there are a few things you need to be able to play the game that we call capitalism. The first is good credit. The second, ability to make safe and secure contracts with others. The ability to organize yourself together to form a global identity. And the ability to organize your production to enter into foreign markets. Now, right now, people in the informal economy have none of these. And it's basically because of their governmental and legal systems. We're a little bit spoiled here in the United States to have literally the world's greatest governmental system. You know, whether you like it or not, it is the world's greatest. Government in most of the world is disastrous. It is rife with corruption, and it's simply unfriendly to poor people. This legal exclusion is called the paper wall. And because these informal workers are not able to get over this formal, or this legal system, this barrier, they have no rights and no choices. They simply have to do whatever they can to make it to the next day, to subsist, to live. But they are the world's greatest entrepreneurs. There's been a massive migration out of the countrysides into the cities. And they've all gotten together because they know if they gather together and organize labor amongst themselves and divide it up amongst themselves, then they'll all be more prosperous. Dividing labor simply means that this woman's selling jewelry on the street. This man makes and sells shoes. This man sells fruit, decorative lanterns, so on, so forth. So what is a solution to this legal problem? Well, I think organization of labor, if they have the ability to organize, then we will see a reduction in it. Because right now, they lack all 7 of the key economic securities that are required to have prosperous lives, which are proper employment opportunities, protection against dismissal, job security, protection against accidents and illnesses at work, opportunities to gain and retain skills, secure and adequate incomes, and a collective voice. Now, this is actually already happening. In India, SEWA, or the Self-Employed Women's Association, started from scratch with 0 members. And in just 25 years, they're now at 1 million members. Now, I think this is important because there's been this recent shift towards the criminalization of this economy. Governments are cracking down on them because they are operating outside of the legal system. And places such as China they're just trying to clean up their image. They don't want foreigners to see this happening on the street, so they're shuffling these people off. And if they were able to have this collective voice, I believe that we would promote their entrepreneurial spirit and move away from the criminalization of the economy. So going back to capitalism, what's happening in our world today? What's gone wrong? Well, what's gone right? Let's start with what's gone right. The good things that capitalism has given us, big corporations are able to give us wonderful technologies like cell phones, computers. We get nutritious food, nice cars, and nice houses, life-saving medicine, and so much more. But here's my problem with it. The idea we talked about earlier about self-interested individuals acting in their own self-interest, creating wealth, well, I believe that's true, but in the last couple decades, it's been taken way out of context by people like Ayn Rand, the author of Atlas Shrugged, and Murray Rothbard, who we met earlier. They've taken this to the extremes. Rand wrote that civilization is the progress towards a society of privacy. The savage's whole existence is public, ruled by the laws of his tribe. Civilization is the process of setting man free from men. I wholeheartedly disagree with this. I believe in the principles of solidarity and camaraderie, but I would recommend Atlas Shrugged. It's a pretty good novel, as novels go. But this ideology has created what I call this celebrity culture, excuse me. I think this picture would be made better if she was sitting in a Hummer in the driveway of her McMansion. But this was what we were shown. This was what we were told. We were told to be selfish, to be profit maximizing, to not really care about the wants or the needs of others. Bill Gates famously pointed out that our medical companies spend far more on curing baldness than on curing malaria, which is still the world's #1 killing disease. And this can be extrapolated into many fields. Globally, we spend $24 billion on cosmetics, we spend $40 billion on weight loss, and malaria gets 1.5. This is simply because it is not profitable to cure malaria. And that goes for pretty much every other social need in the world. Well, we had our fun, we partied, but as most of the college students in the room know, partying is not a sustainable course of action. And it all folded like a house of cards in 2008. Now, even though Adam Smith is pointed to as the father of these ideas of self-interest, he opened his first book with this: "How selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature which interest him in the fortune of others, and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it, except the pleasure of seeing it." So in our post-Great Recession world, people are changing their priorities, and we're looking for alternatives. So what is the alternative? Communism? Well, we can go back and see that communism has not worked out in the past. It just doesn't work very well. But Cornel West, who was just here recently at FSU, he said that we're on the cusp of a great movement to resist and roll back the corporate domination by banks, energy companies, and war profiteers. This is the shift. This is the revolution. And I believe that it's called market socialism. Some people have called it social capitalism, but I prefer market socialism. It's a little bit more provocative. It simply means finding a way to marry the amazing benefits that the free market has created in the world with human need around the world. And now I know what you're thinking. How do we do this? If it's not profitable, how can we incentivize big companies to do it? Well, we can incentivize it. Most of you are probably familiar with the RED campaign. This was run by many different companies, such as Starbucks and Armani, and they promised to give a certain portion of their profits from red goods to help fight AIDS in Africa. This was met with a great reaction from the public because we were still getting the quality goods that we expect from big corporations, and we were doing our part in turn. This is voting with our dollars. And if we all, as consumers, make a conscious effort to give our business to corporations that we know are socially responsible, then the other corporations will have no choice but to follow suit. There was recently a Fidelity Investments commercial that was run on YouTube, and some of you have probably seen it. They didn't speak about investing at all. The entire commercial was just about the water crisis that the world is facing, and it's called Thinking Big. They're telling everyone, we're thinking about these things, we care, we're getting involved. But it has its critics. A lot of people say, oh, well, Red didn't really do what they said they were going to do, or these companies are just talking, it's all, it's just lip service. So what can you do to get personally involved in this new socially minded world? Well, that is where microfinance comes in. Now, microfinance is such an impressive philosophy that its inventor, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, won a Nobel Prize for it back in 2005. Now, if you're not familiar with microfinance, I think it can be summed up pretty well with this little cartoon. It's lending in coins and recovery in notes. It's just microloans. This could be a loan of $10 to someone in Africa for a bicycle. Now, with that bicycle, they can now take twice as many goods to market, effectively doubling their profits. And we know that this can have a really significant impact. There's a study done by Filmer and Pritchett that compared television ownership to incomes. In Côte d'Ivoire, people living on $1 a day, 14% of them had a television. But people living on $2 a day, 45% of them had a television. In South Africa, 7 to 17%. Peru, 10 to 21%, literally doubling. And this same trend can be seen in many different contexts all over the world. Now, I'm going to China this summer to work with one of these microfinance firms, but all of you can get involved right where you sit. Websites such as Kiva and Microplace are making it easier than ever for everyone. You can just go online, scroll through, see these entrepreneurs, meet them, make deals with them, and your small investment in their lives can literally be the game changer for them. So here's my call to action to all the young people in the room, all the college students. We are the next global leaders, the social activists, the entrepreneurs, the inventors. Basically, we're very marketable. Companies want to hire us. But more and more young people graduating from college say that they want to work for a company that they know is socially responsible. Companies with values and companies with principles. This is voting with our feet. We can show them that these things matter to us, as Adam Smith said. Now, I know people are going to say this is bleeding heart syndrome, and yes, I am a bleeding heart, and I'm proud of it. And I believe that everybody has it in them. Even Ebenezer Scrooge came around in the end. And I know that we're supposed to be this lost generation, the post-ideological generation, the generation that could never aspire to anything greater than our Facebook profiles, the generation that could never unglue ourselves from the television screen or our smartphones. But we have shown, and will continue to show, that everything associated with students, such as solidarity and camaraderie, is just alive today as it's ever been in the past. We are just as ideological as we ever have been. So I encourage you all, go out, make as much profit as you care to, impact your world, but never forget to put profit, excuse me. I almost messed up there. Put people before profit always. Thank you very much.